So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Welcome back. That was the amazing Amanda Gorman, Youth Poet Laureate. Now, among the initiatives of the new Biden administration is a plan for immigration reform. Politicians on both sides of the aisle have been promising immigration reform for years, but little has been done. Biden is hoping to change that. Through executive orders, President Biden halted deportations for 100 days as he reviews the policy. He also eliminated the so-called Muslim ban and ordered construction of the border wall to cease. But his biggest move is the U.S. Citizenship Act, which would offer a pathway for citizenship to 11 million undocumented residents. It would allow them to apply for temporary legal status. After 5 years, they could apply for a green card, and then 3 years after that, they could apply to become U.S. citizens. The bill would also allow dreamers and those in the country under temporary protective status to apply for green cards immediately and for citizenship in 3 years. They would also be required to pass a background check and pay any back taxes they owe. The bill also increases funding for border security and increases aid to Central American countries. After the bill was introduced, I spoke to Maria Rodriguez, Executive Director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition, and asked her if this was really the right time to introduce immigration reform.
Absolutely. It's time to turn the page on not just the last 4 years, but a couple decades of criminalizing American workers, Florida families. And so we really need to see this light at the end of the tunnel. Absolutely. Last night, many Floridian families slept with a little bit of hope in their heart, hoping that they could finally come out of the shadows.
But this bill is controversial from a Republican standpoint because of what they see as blanket amnesty for nearly 11 million people. How would you address that issue, that they're concerned that basically you're rewarding bad behavior?
I think that no matter what gets introduced, it's going to be framed as amnesty. And the reality is the vast number of Americans and voters, poll after poll, show that they want a pathway in an orderly way to recognize that our economies and our communities are bettered by immigrants and immigration. And so I think that we need to not let a few hijack what's good for the many. And there's been for years, decades support for immigration reform. It's just some extremists who are blocking what's good, not just morally, but for our economies and our future.
Rick Scott put out a statement. He has come out strongly against the legislation, and this is a quote from him. He describes it as a radical immigration agenda of amnesty and open borders. What would you say to Senator Scott?
The status quo hurts us. It hurts our public safety. It hurts our national security. It hurts. The status quo right now does not serve us, and it comes at a very high moral and financial cost. We need to support American families to prosper, to be as productive as they can be, to come out of the shadows, to be able to get a driver's license and a work permit, to contribute and create and grow the economy. So they offer no solutions, Jim, like no response. They want to deport dreamers and have been deporting dreamers. They don't care that they're exploiting farm workers, working from day up to sundown. providing an essential service, which is our food. And food is a national security issue. The ability to have local food is important for our communities. So they're not providing solutions or responses. We cannot continue more of the same, because if you don't care about democracy and you don't care about our values and our morality, you should care about the fact that it's tax dollars that are going to criminalize these families and these communities.
Critics also make the case that given the hard economic times we're in, with so many Americans out of work, that creating this legislation, which would essentially have non-citizens competing for jobs that Americans could potentially do, and that in the midst of a COVID crisis and an economic crisis where you have almost 11 million Americans out of work, the priority should be finding jobs for those Americans, not for clearing a pathway to citizenship for folks who are in this country without documentation.
The people who say that don't know how the economy functions and how it works, and they're using a scarcity mentality, and I would say some of them a xenophobic mentality around it. 500 economists, Nobel laureates signed on a letter to say that immigration grows the economy and provides more opportunities. Immigrants are 3 times more likely to be entrepreneurs. Many of the TPS holders have been here for decades. The DACA professionals are employing other people. So a fabric of our community, both from a law enforcement, from a democracy, from a social cohesion, and from an economic perspective, we want people to be as productive as they can be. And by providing more opportunities, we all benefit. It's not just our public health that's interdependent, it's also our economies that are interdependent. And so we should understand that our fates are intertwined, and that we need to move forward with this reform.
Where do you see this going in terms of the politics of it? Because you and I both know this is a tough road to go down. You know, somebody who was once an ally, Marco Rubio, who was part of the Gang of Eight back in 2013 and tried to do immigration reform, has come out against this plan. Echoing Rick Scott's comments, he called it blanket amnesty. That was the term he used as well. You know, this was someone who a number of years ago tried this, but seems to feel that he got burned in that process and isn't willing to go down that path again. What would you say to Senator Rubio?
That there's a lot of support, moral leaders, economic leaders, labor leaders, community leaders, and it's important. It's going to take all of us, Jim, local electeds, municipal, state leaders, and leadership requires discernment and requires judgment. And I'm hoping that the calculus that Senator Rubio in particular, who does understand the value of immigration and immigrants, that he sees that it's politically expedient now to turn the page and to provide the leadership that is necessary to move forward with this. This is a festering wound in our communities. Black and brown people are disproportionately impacted by this criminalization. Workers, families, entrepreneurs, high-skilled workers, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe that the rational, reasonable thing is to come into engagement, to move forward a proposal that will help us get to a new level of solutions on a variety of other issues. It's time. It's time for immigration reform. It's time. And I'm really hoping that all your listeners, your viewers, take whatever action they can to make their voices heard for this necessary reform, because no place like Miami and Florida will benefit as much by this reform.
One of the conversations I've had in the past with Senator Rubio when it came to immigration was he does not believe, at least what he told me, was that you can do anything in a comprehensive, that word comprehensive becomes problematic, that the only way to sort of move forward is to break it up into pieces, maybe dealing with DACA and the Dreamers, maybe dealing with TPS, high-skilled workers and those permits, that trying to do it in a piecemeal fashion is better way to legislate than doing something with comprehensive attached to it, because once you label something comprehensive, somebody's going to object to some part of it and it goes down. Do you agree with that, or why do you think it's best to deal with this all in one bill?
To be honest, I believe that we need a complete view of the system, because it is a system that impacts, you know, the shredding of the refugee program and the asylum and the worker and high skilled and farm workers. So it is an interconnected system. But you know what? After all these years of struggle, Jim, the gray hairs and wrinkles have brought some wisdom that there are many paths to giving relief and to bringing some solution. There's several different legislative vehicles right now in the House that have been introduced or are being introduced. So whether that's the TPS, whether that's a DACA, whether that's a farm worker, whether that's essential workers. So many of the essential workers at the front line at all levels in a variety of sectors have either are not citizens or legal permanent residents. They could use some relief. So by whatever means necessary, I think it's time. There is a cohesive project being put forward by a Cuban American respected senator who has a track record of bipartisan, and he said he has his mind open, his heart open, and his hands open to really engage the 10 Republicans that are needed. And we really trust that Marco Rubio will step up like he did in 2013 to move this forward.
We'll be right back.